Welcome, listeners, to the Asset Reliability at Work podcast. As you may know, we cover a bunch of topics centered on asset management and reliability for manufacturing facilities. We share insights directly from the professionals who are in the field, talking with plant leaders, developing asset management plans, and coordinating those next steps for reliability success. In this episode, we'll speak with Randy Heisler, who is a managing principal at Lifecycle Engineering, to discuss the practice of implementing reliability excellence, which is something that can be instituted for any organization. So Randy will highlight the concepts behind the practice, he'll talk about some of the key benefits, as well as identify the obstacles some organizations may face that might prevent the achievement of excellence. Now let's get the conversation started with Randy Heisler in reliability and the path to achieving excellence. Well, I'm very excited to have you on the podcast, Randy. I know you have a wealth of experience in the field of implementing reliability excellence for organizations here in the United States and around the globe. So with that, can you talk first about your background prior to joining the Lifecycle team?
Well, thanks for having me, Derek. I guess I'd start many years ago where I started my career in a coke plant in a steel mill environment and started as a millwright in a coke plant. Went from there into many different maintenance positions. Ended up spending some time in operations as well. And then as things progressed and my career advanced a bit, I ended up being the corporate manager of reliability for an integrated steelmaker. Really became an internal consultant of sorts for that company. Enjoyed that type of work and got an opportunity to come to Lifecycle to be a bit of a what you might call an external consultant, and have done that the last 13 years here at Lifecycle, and got a chance to see the good, the bad, and the ugly out there in the world from a manufacturing and facility standpoint.
Well, there's no doubt that we have the right person to speak on this subject. So let's dive into the concepts behind the practice of reliability excellence. So the practice itself has evolved so much over the past 30 years. Let's start here in 2016 by asking a simple question. How do you define reliability?
Yeah, that's always an interesting topic. Reliability, I think I always think of it, from an asset perspective. That if you're achieving reliability, that asset has a function. It's performing that function, and that's really, and it's doing that time and time again. Each time that you want that asset to do what its desired function is, that's what happens. And just to expand on that, because we're talking about reliability excellence, that if an organization is wanting to achieve reliability excellence, now that expands to how the organization approaches it. That everyone in the organization is pulling, on the oars, and that we've got the right processes in place, that we're doing the right work, on that asset so that it can achieve its function. So it's much more holistic if an organization wants to achieve reliability excellence.
Now, I know Lifecycle Engineering has a unique approach to implement reliability excellence. So can you speak more to that and what that approach is exactly?
Sure, Derek. It's the way that I explain it, because it can be kind of somewhat complex, and in a short episode like this, I would equate it to something that Toyota came up with many years ago. I think that a lot of people understand is a lean manufacturing approach, and they've got a tool they apply that's called an A3. And an A3 is really based on if you think about A3, people say, "What's that?" Well, if you think about your printer, it's an 11 by 17 sheet of paper. And Toyota's thought around that was that any problem can be solved on a sheet of paper. And it really starts with, and it's how it kind of mirrors, our process mirrors that thinking, of which I like to call it A3 thinking, is that first, you need to determine your current state. What is the current state of reliability? And we do that through assessing. We've got a 29-element reliability excellence model, and we use that model and through a series of interviews and time in the field doing observations, what we call a day in the life of observations, as well as collecting data and somewhat triangulating what we see in an organization, whether that's a manufacturing plant or in a facilities environment. It's really about starting in determining what the current state is. Now, people that may not know a lot about reliability or may not really understand how to achieve reliability excellence or what does that really mean, they need to clearly understand what the future looks like. And the A3 tool is really determining current state and future state as the first part of that problem solving if an organization is struggling to achieve reliability. So we use an educational element, and we educate people in what is reliability and what is reliability excellence and what it might take to achieve that. So that people understand what the future looks like. So they've got that goal. If we understand our current state, and then we also understand what good looks like or what best practices are, we can then chart a path to achieve it. And the another quadrant of the A3 tool, for those that might be familiar with that, is an action plan. So if I don't understand where I am currently and I know what the target or future state needs to be, or that I want it to be, I need an action plan to achieve that. And along with that action plan, if I'm going to take those actions, I need a business case to support it. So an A3 is a current state, future state, action plan, business case type problem solving tool. Our process mirrors that. So when we go into an organization, we try to help them understand what best practices are, where they are currently, what the actions are that they need to take to achieve reliability excellence, and why they should do it. What's the business case? What are those drivers that may exist? And we'll talk about that a little later.
When you examine the process of reliability excellence and the steps that you have to take and consider, when implementing a program like this, one of those elements is continuous improvement. How does LCE's continuous improvement process fit into this journey of achieving excellence?
Well, the first thing I would say is that the way we look at continuous improvement really starts with being aware, let's say, of where your competition is. And if you and your competition are all continuously improving, you may end up being in the same place. And our approach really, works with clients to create what we call a step change, and then with continuous improvement following. And that step change allows organizations to, in a sense, get ahead of their competition. So it requires that step change, and then with continuous improvement, by continuing to audit the processes that are out there, auditing the organization and how they're functioning, auditing that, which there's often a resistance to change, right? If someone is in a reactive environment and they're trying to be proactive and achieve reliability excellence, there's a change component. Doing continual audits on how we're progressing and have we made that step change, and are we doing the right things to put continuous improvement in place.
Now let's get to the part that I think most of our listeners are curious about. I know especially those who are in any kind of management or leadership position within a plant organization, and that is the benefits of implementing a practice like reliability excellence. Is there any kind of way to estimate the types of return that these leaders can expect when implementing?
It kind of goes back to that A3 example where I didn't talk about the business case, the reason to achieve reliability excellence, and that's one of the first, also one of the first things that needs to be determined. Is it cost, or are our costs too high? And I'll go a little deeper into that in a second. Or is it about capacity or availability or uptime? So it's it's different for organizations, different for different organizations. Oftentimes it's our costs are simply too high and if we're not sold out, then the capacity or uptime piece doesn't come into play. So that needs to be understood going in. And both can work. There's often more opportunity, on the capacity side, availability side of the equation. So, from a labor and material aspect, if we become more productive, then our labor material costs go down. Some examples of that is if an organization has high overtime rates, that by being more proactive and productive, doing more planning and scheduling and doing more things in a proactive way, overtime rates can go down. Contractor costs can go down. Maybe we don't need the same level of outside support, because we've now improved the productivity of our internal workforce. Just a couple examples of where the labor piece may be affected, when one is on this journey. The other side of that, of course, if our equipment is reliable, our assets are reliable, we're not using so many spare parts and materials and capital as well. So those costs may well go down On the capacity or uptime or availability, part of the equation, it's really about determining can an organization sell product that they make? Can they sell all that they make? And what are they currently doing? And what's that delta? So those determinations have to be made. That ends up providing that business case that is part of that whole A3 thinking.
All right, now that we've discussed the benefits for those organizations who achieve reliability excellence, let's discuss the obstacles that can prevent the achievement of excellence. Can you talk about some of the most common obstacles you've seen that prevent the success of this initiative? And what advice would you give to those organizations considering this journey of reliability excellence?
Oftentimes what we run up against is when you walk into an organization, whether it's manufacturing or facilities, there's a lot going on. We're not, this reliability excellence sometimes is not the only game in town. Okay, there's many other initiatives, and we tend to use the term competing initiatives because there's certainly some resource requirement. Okay, when going on this journey, so competing initiatives often get in the way, and the key to kind of removing that barrier is to find the synergies between what are those initiatives, how can they link to achieving reliability excellence, to try to remove those and prioritize. Sometimes organizations are doing things that may not be the highest priority, that maybe need to stand aside. But in a lot of cases, the key is figuring out how to find the synergies and link those together. Another one that often comes up is that their equipment for various reasons, and it's usually cost-related or business-related, have not been maintained. So decisions may have to be made in order to bring that equipment to a maintainable condition. It's because as you start to improve and start to improve your preventive maintenance programs, your predictive maintenance programs, equipment does need to be in a maintainable condition. So that's sometimes a barrier. I guess from an overall perspective, the way to get around it, some of the barriers that people run into, like those and others, is just simply making sure we're committed, making sure that, and especially that the management team is aligned, making sure they're committed to this change, committed to achieving reliability excellence, because it's not an easy thing to do. There needs to be this, if we're committed, that really means that we have this willingness to change, because it will require change. A lot of organizations find themselves in a reactive environment, and it's not easy to go from being reactive to what I like to say, from reactive to proactive. It is not an easy thing to do. It requires change. It requires a lot of focus. Okay, it kind of goes back a little bit to those competing initiatives, but focusing on this, making it important to everyone, creating expectations, holding people accountable, communicating. Communicating. It sounds too simple, but sometimes just asking the right questions. Leadership's committed. That means they're out there asking the right questions. How are we doing? How's our asset performing? Are we meeting our production bogeys? Are the assets available when they need to be, and so on, and keeping that at the forefront of people's minds, that gosh, this reliability excellence thing is important, and for those naysayers, it's not going away. So it's very important for management to set the stage and walk the talk to achieve it. One of the ways that we help organizations is through something that is part of the ProSci methodology called ADKAR, and ADKAR simply is another acronym, ADKAR, ADKAR, is that the organization, one of the first things to do, and I mentioned it, in that A3 thinking, is to educate people and make them aware of what reliability is, aware of what their role is within that. And hopefully, if you've done that well, you've created some desire for change. That we're going to move away from the status quo. So you've created awareness and desire, and through education and training, you've started to create this knowledge and ability to make it happen. And the last piece, which goes back to that, the management side of the equation, is the R for reinforcement, is that management must continually reinforce those positive behaviors, those proactive behaviors, where we get away from rewarding people for fixing the equipment real fast, and we get into rewarding them for the equipment not having broken in the first place. So it's a constant reinforcement. segues back to that continuous improvement process of checking how we're doing those audits, keeping reliability excellence at the forefront, keeping that focus. And from what I've seen, organizations that do that well and they focus and maintain that commitment can achieve reliability excellence.
With that being said, Randy, I think that's a great spot for us to end this episode. Thank you so much for taking the time to provide your expertise on this topic of reliability excellence. So just to recap, we discussed the concepts that make up reliability excellence, the implementation process for organizations, the benefits of fully implementing and achieving excellence, as well as the obstacles that may prevent an organization from being successful in this initiative. Once more, thank you to Randy Heisler, and thank you to all of our listeners, and I hope we were able to shed more light on the topic of reliability excellence for you in this episode.
Derek, if I could leave you with just one more thought.
Oh, yeah.
Just one more thought for the folks out there. There's a great quote from a book called Execution, written by Bossidy and Sharan, and it's stuck with me for many years now. And I always tell folks that, and especially leaders in the organization, that, like I'd mentioned, requires change and changing the way people think to achieve reliability excellence. And the quote is, "We cannot think our way into a new way of acting. We must act our way into a new way of thinking." Thanks for having me, Derek.
Thank you, Randy. Hey, listeners, one more thing before you go. If you have any feedback for the show, or you have maybe some suggestions for upcoming topics you'd love to hear about, we'd like to hear from you. So there's two ways to get in contact with us. The first is on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @LCE_today, so be sure to follow us. And then the other way is to email the show at podcast@lce.com. Once again, thank you for joining the show, and we look forward to more episodes on the Asset Reliability at Work podcast.